Hey guys, welcome back. So, today we're going to be not ranking. This is like a top 10, but it's really like 20 movies. I have a list of my top 10 favorite horror movies that are in a specific order. I also have a list of 10 more movies that all could have made like a number 11 or number 12 spot, but I'm very indecisive. So, those are not in any specific order, the honorable mentions, but the top 10 is like in a locked position. So let's get through those honorable mentions. First up, if you know me, then you know I'm a fan of Halloween. In 1988, they released Halloween for the Return of Michael Myers after, I want to say 1982's Season of the Witch. I think it was 1982. But it was definitely Season of the Witch. In Halloween 2, they killed off Michael Myers. 1982 or 83, they released Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, which didn't have anything to do with Michael Myers. Which is, fine. But I wish they had kind of stuck with that premise, but instead they gave us Halloween 4 The Return of Michael Myers, which is honestly a very good movie. It introduces Laurie Strode's niece, Jamie, and Laurie Strode is dead, and she's like the main final girl from the series, and she died in a off-screen car accident. Jamie Lee Curtis didn't want to come back for the role, so they introduced Jamie, which is fine. I think she's a nice addition to the cast, but that's really all I've got to say. It's a good movie, in my opinion. A lot of people have this at like their number 2 spot. I don't think it's number 2 worthy, especially when you look at the Halloween series as a whole. I mean, there's 40 years there of content, and you're gonna put that at your number 2 spot? No. There's much better movies. Moving on for in our honorable mentions here, Happy Death Day. It's the only PG-13 movie on this list. At least I think. I'll let you know throughout. If I don't mention it being PG-13, then just assume it's rated R. Happy Death Day revolves around Groundhog Day as a horror movie, and that to me is just an amazing premise. Groundhog Day is a classic Bill Murray movie, and when you turn it from a comedy into a horror movie with it repeating this girl's death over and over again until she can find her killer, and then she's allowed to live again. It's a very interesting premise in my book. Now, what people think isn't really an interesting premise is who the killer turns out to be, but it really works in my mind, and I'm not going to spoil any of it. If you want to learn more, I did a review on this movie on Instagram, and I'm doing the sequel later this week. But I think I'm going to put out a review for this on YouTube first, so that it kind of makes sense. Next up, we've got Doctor Sleep, 2019 sequel to The Shining. First of all, it has Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ewan McGregor in this, along with Rebecca Ferguson, and those two are they perform so well together. It's really a great movie, and people don't think it's a worthy sequel to The Shining. I do. I think it's a very worthy sequel to The Shining. Throughout, it actually flashes back to what happened to Danny Torrance in 1980. And the scenes that they used, they recreated most of them, but honestly, I had to Google it to see if those scenes were actually recreated or if they shot new, or if they used footage from the original movie. That's how close it was. Throw in there Henry Thomas, who just looks like Jack Nicholson, who does play Jack Torrance. It's just a very good movie. Great plot too. It centers around this little girl named Abra who has the shine, and Danny's trying to protect her from these vampires who are trying to steal her shine and kill her. Very well done movie, in my opinion. Another very well done movie, The Shining itself, Stanley Kubrick's 1988 or 1980. Oh my goodness, sorry, classic. Yeah, I know. This is where this list might get a little controversial. That and another choice that I have on there. I know a lot of people have this as their number one, and I don't blame you. But as I was going through my list of everything that I have, as you've seen most of so far, I forgot that I had it for a second, and I don't know how I did that. Especially when I had all of them laid out on my bed. I'm looking right at them all, making my list. I've already done a review on both Dr. Sleep and The Shining as well. So if you want me to do videos on those, let me know and I will do them. The reviews are like one of the first 10 that I did. And I bought Dr. Sleep specifically to review it, along with Terminator Dark Fate, on my birthday. So I may hold that in a higher regard too because of that reasoning. As far as Stanley Kubrick films, The Shining is my favorite of his works, and I know Stephen King didn't like it at all, but I believe he's let up on it in recent years, so that's always good to hear. Moving on, It Chapter 2. Now, I know a lot of people weren't huge fans of It Chapter 2 when they released it, but to me, it's a good sequel to the original It. This Pennywise pop here is from Chapter 2, and actually it was the first horror movie I've seen in theaters. It's long, and the whole Indian burial ground, whatever that thing was, that plot, stupid in my opinion. But it how do I put this? The characters that you see in the original film, all the kids, their adult characters perfectly match who they are. Case in point, Finn Wolfhard is basically a young Bill Hader, and I'm okay with it. Speaking of, Bill Hader is one of my favorite SNL cast members, so I had to see it because he was in it. I also really enjoy James McAvoy, so there is that as well. Jessica Chastain's alright in it. Jay Ryan is actually very good in it too. It's just all around, it's a good sequel to It, focusing more on the adult life, which is something the mini-series kind of jumped back and forth on, and I think splitting it up the way they did for the two It films was the smarter choice. Next up, we're gonna use this to show it off. Friday Part 7, The New Blood. So, it's often dubbed Jason versus Carrie because the final girl in it, she has telekinetic powers, and I guess she killed her father as a kid when she collapsed a dock, and then at the end she uses her telekinetic powers to bring her father back. But other than that, weird plot. It's still a good movie. The only thing I don't like about it is the therapist, and the fact that he grabs the girl's mom and uses her as a human shield. That blows me away and really bugs me, and I think that was a bad choice on the director's part. But you gotta throw in there that you got Kane Hodder as Jason. Now this is Jason from Part 6. But throwing in there that you have Kane Hodder playing Jason, it really makes for a wonderful movie. I really enjoyed it, and it's one a lot of people actually enjoy, but it's certainly not number 7 or whatever I originally had it as. Next up, Halloween 2, another double pack that we're going to work from for a few minutes. So this is the first sequel to Michael Myers, or to Halloween. Takes place same night, and they did a wonderful job making it. You know, it was 3 or 4 years later when it came out. John Carpenter did a wonderful job making sure that everything was right and that everything was specifically set to be that original night. Dick Warlock is a great Michael Myers, but I mean, you're not going to beat Nick Castle, who is the original, or James Jude Courtney, who plays it in the new films. But I don't particularly care for some of the decisions the characters make. On the one hand, Dr. Loomis is telling a military police officer, hey, don't walk up to Michael, he's probably still alive. And the military police officer's like, no, he's definitely dead. Nope, no, he wasn't. He stabbed that guy and killed him. Also, the kills are stepped up, too. They're much more gory. That I enjoy. But this is no original Halloween. It is no Halloween 2018. So, that's why it is where it is. Okay, now for one people are going to yell at me for. And I know I'm laughing, and I know you're probably nervous about what I'm about to say. So I'm just going to rip this Band-Aid right off. Next up is Scream. Yeah, I know, it's a quintessential horror movie, and it's still really good. In fact, I watched it last night. Another one I kind of forgot I owned. Because I have it on digital, I don't have a physical copy for it, because I can never find the Scream movies anywhere. So yeah, when I finished this list, I went to look for something to watch on my Xbox, and I'm like, Scream? I own Scream. So, yeah. So, like I said, this honorable mentions list is in no particular order. Because honestly, if I had remembered it, Scream would probably be number 4. But there's stuff on this list that I don't want to mess with because I think this is my definitive top 10. But yes, that's why this list is pretty much all tied for number 11, because Scream would have been on that list, along with some others that are on here, like The Shining or Doctor Sleep. Scream is just a great cast. First off, that opening is iconic, setting up not only the meta humor that we're going to find throughout the franchise, what's your favorite scary movie? And, and then the whole, who was the killer in Friday the 13th? Oh, it was Jason. No, it wasn't. Anyone who knows Friday the 13th and has seen it, then you know that the killer was actually Mrs. Voorhees. So these guys have a knowledge of the tropes in horror movies. And in fact, the main character, Sidney Prescott, uses one of them and then gets attacked and then does that thing she was just berating the guy about. It had something to do with how women, the final girl in the movie, always runs up the stairs instead of running out the front door. So when the killer pops out, or Ghostface pops out, she runs up the stairs. Now, of course, Ghostface isn't like, well, look what you just said you were doing. It also gives away who the killer is, but it does it in a way that you're sitting there thinking when you're watching it, no, it can't be him. It's not him. There's no way it's him. It's not actually him. And it is who they set it up to be, but he has a teammate. I'm not going to say who the two are, just know that they are males. And, I mean, it's kind of obvious. Everybody's seen Scream at this point. Throw into that, though, Matthew Lillard. If you don't know who Matthew Lillard is, he plays Shaggy in the 2 live-action Scooby-Doo movies from the early 2000s. That man brings so much energy to this movie. When I review it, you'll find out more. I'm not going to do it yet because I want to get the other 3 Scream movies to do kind of together. But man, Matthew Lillard's performance is just so fun to watch. I love every scene he is in. He steals the show away from everybody. And you've got actors like David Arquette and Courtney Cox in there. So there's not much more I can really say about Matthew Lillard. Okay. Next up, go back to the Friday. Like I said, we are still in the honorable mentions. Like I said, there are 10 of them. Next up, Friday Part 6. That's what this guy is from. That's what Mini Jason is from. This is the one, they killed off Jason in Part 4, and then brought him back in Part 6 after Part 5, The New Beginning, did not do very well. So they bring him back through weird ways. He gets impaled and then electrocuted, and he's brought back to life, and now he's a zombie, so he's got like superpowers and stuff. Add into that, this movie actually shows actual campers at the campgrounds, which I think is great because we've never actually seen them. You've got parts 1, 2, and 3 where it's just the counselors. Part 4 is set on an old family cabin where it's just random kids. They're not counselors, they're just random kids plus the family. Part 5 is set on like a halfway house farm. Weird characters there. And also the weird twist that it's not Jason, it's Roy Burns. And then part 7 and 8 don't really have to do with campers. This is the first movie that they bring actual children in and do the whole, hey, camp's in session, and this guy's running around killing people. I actually enjoyed that because one of my biggest fears as a kid when I went to camp was I knew all these tropes. I knew that there could be a silent killer in the woods. You know, obviously there never was because I'm here making these videos, and I went to camp like 5 years ago at this point. It was the last time I went. But it was always one of those kind of background thoughts of there could be someone out there. So I really enjoy that one. I also think that's the best look for Jason. Parts 7 and 8 people like, but I don't like the actual face design for part 8. But the only redeeming quality from part 7's Jason is the exposed spine. I think this is definitely the coolest looking Jason that we've seen. Finally, for the honorable mentions, another one I don't own a physical copy of, and another one that people are probably going to make fun of me for, Bride of Chucky. Okay. 1988's original Child's Play, which we'll see in a minute, was probably one of the most iconic horror movies of the 80s. I say one of the most because obviously there's just so many, from all the Friday the 13th, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and The Shining, and of course the Halloween movies. But this is the one that not only has a child get attacked by a doll, but it's a killer doll. So it's a different premise. So as the sequels went on through the 90s, they kind of got more humorous. Bride of Chucky is probably, when you look at those humor-filled movies, from Seed of Chucky, well, it's really just these two, Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky. Bride is better, but it's also kind of better than the 2 sequels we got, but it's funnier, and I do enjoy that. I think they did a great job going with a goofier premise. But that's all I've really got to say about Bride of Chucky. Moving on. The original Child's Play. I had never seen this movie when I bought it. To be perfectly honest, I had no intentions of ever watching a Child's Play movie because I thought the killer doll premise was far too creepy. It was $5 at Walmart, so I picked it up. It had a pretty cool cover for it. I wonder if I'll flip through the little book it gives me with all the covers in it while I talk. You might be able to see it there. It's got that pretty cool cover, but the cover came off when you took off the plastic wrapping, and then there was no way to stick it inside of the sleeve there, so I don't know what happened to it. man, was I blown away from what I saw. So this is the legitimate top 10 now. And this is like, these movies are locked in place for me. Child's Play is definitely now one of my favorite franchises. And I'm gonna cover Friday the 13th, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Child's Play in October. For an entire month of horror, I'm doing the big four franchises. This one for me was probably the best of the Child's Play series, and that's really not surprising to a lot of people. First of all, Brad Dourif is just so funny. And one of the scene that really sold this movie for me was a scene in an elevator. An old couple is like staring at him, and they're like, "What an ugly doll." And as they leave the elevator, he's like, "Fuck you." That cracked me up. So I gotta give it that. It's also directed by Tom Holland. Not that Tom Holland. And you've also got Andy Barclay, who is probably the cutest kid in a horror movie. He's the things that he says you don't expect a child to say. Especially when he tells his mom and Aunt Maggie that Chucky says if I tell, he'll kill me, or Chucky says he killed Aunt Maggie because that bitch had it coming. This is a 6-year-old saying that bitch had it coming, so that was hilarious to me and also adorable. So I gotta give it props for that. Moving along. Another controversial pick, but I don't care. This is my opinion. Halloween 3. The Return. I can't even speak, apparently. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. Yeah, it's different. It's not Michael Myers. It's an Irish toy maker who is trying to kill all the children of the world. Does he succeed? The ending is actually left pretty ambiguous. We don't know if he actually succeeds or not in what he's attempting to do. Watch the cat. If you look right up here, you probably saw a cat fly by. So I gotta give it that. They tried to do something different. That was the intention. Kill off Michael after part 2. Because John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, they didn't want to make Halloween 2. They wanted to start this anthology series right after that. The purpose was to focus on different aspects of the holiday. So had the studio not gotten involved and said, "Hey, no, you have to make Halloween 2 about Michael Myers," people wouldn't have come to associate Halloween with Michael Myers. So we would have had a better, we would have had a pretty good series that didn't get run into the ground after, 12 movies and have to get reignited in 40 years later. We would have had an anthology series that I think would have worked really well. And I was excited to hear that was their plan. And that kind of explains why Halloween 3 is the way it is. But when the movie came out, of course, people had already assumed, Halloween 3, Michael Myers is back. No, he's not. I gotta admit, I thought the same thing. When I was like, wait, Season of the Witch? Michael Myers isn't a witch, is he? Oh, I gotta watch that. I was wrong. It has nothing to do with Michael Myers, and I think that's great. And Halloween is one of my favorite horror franchises. If not my personal favorite. So, I gotta give it that it tried something different. And of course, people think it failed. And I kind of see why they think that. Next up, a movie that definitely did not fail and did really well, and has spawned a sequel. The only movie that I wanted to see this year was Halloween Kills. So far, it has not been delayed yet because of COVID-19, so it's promising, and I'm waiting to hear if they do or if they don't. And I'm really hoping they don't, because the way everything works out is I'm going to talk about Halloween 2018, October 15th. Halloween Kills comes out October 16th. Really hoping everything works out well. So, Halloween 2018. Bringing back Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode 40 years later. The only thing that's actually happened was Halloween 1978. All of the other sequels, so Halloween 2, Halloween 4, 5, 6, and H2O, Resurrection, all out the window. And of course, Season of the Witch and the Rob Zombie movies, which weren't part of the main canon. All of those thrown out the window. So now it's just we're working with Halloween 1978. We're restarting the timeline. I really dug it, and I still dig it to this day. Main reason being, I think this might be probably the best Halloween movie since that 1978 original, and it's gorier. I think it's not nearly as bloody or slashery as the Rob Zombie movies, which it doesn't need to be. Those movies are like peak slasher. A lot of people dub kind of the early mid 2000s reboots as grindhouse slasher torture porn, and I agree with them. I think there's too much blood and violence and nudity and stuff like that, so this kind of tones it all down, especially like the nudity part. There's, I want to say, like, no nudity in this movie at all. The original one, there's quite a bit, quite a few gratuitous shots, but directed by David Gordon Green, who's directing the new one, along with John Carpenter and Deborah Hill as producers. And of course, it brings Nick Castle back to do a few scenes as Michael / The Shape. My only confusion is Laurie Strode doesn't learn who Michael Myers is until Halloween 2. She just thinks it's some random guy going around killing people on Halloween night. She doesn't realize that it's Michael until she's told in Halloween 2. So obviously, at some point off screen, she learned, probably through the trial, that it was Michael. But is it just me, or do other people want to see her reaction to that? Because if in my perfect mind, I shouldn't say my perfect mind, my mind is not perfect. My perfect ideal situation for these films is all the events of Halloween happen, and on Halloween 2, you've got Michael still running around. Laurie goes to the hospital, he goes to the hospital, tries to kill her, and that's when he's taken into custody. The hospital doesn't blow up at the end. Michael and Laurie are never made siblings. So that's how I kind of would like the ideal situation to go. And there's certainly more details. No cult stuff, obviously. That's kind of something the 5th and 6th Halloween movies do, is they introduce the Cult of Thorn, and I'm glad that was retconned by this movie. So Halloween 2018 fixed a lot of problems from the later sequels of 1978's Halloween. Moving along, another controversial one, but I think a lot of people actually agree with. We're going to do the original Friday the 13th. First off, Jason's not the killer. It's his mother, Mrs. Voorhees. That doesn't bother me too much, but I also find it to be kind of your straightforward slasher, which was its intent. A lot of people called it a 1980s version of Halloween, which I get. A lot of first-person POV shots, but man, are the kills great. First of all, you got Kevin Bacon's arrow through the throat that malfunctioned during their one take, so the makeup assistant had to blow fake blood through a tube. We've also got quite a few on-screen throat slits. It's all great, but that's what makes that movie. And I think Betsy Palmer as Mrs. Voorhees is wonderful. But like I said, the only actor you hear from anymore is Kevin Bacon. And I believe this is his first role, so gotta give it some credit for that. Moving right along here, A Nightmare on Elm Street. The first Nightmare on Elm Street movie. So, I'm going to use this opportunity to talk about my newest collectible. Meet Mini Freddy. I like this guy. It makes him look like a Scooby-Doo villain version of Freddy Krueger. So, Freddy was killed by the parents of the Elm Street, and I guess dream demons came to him and turned him into what he is now, and now he goes around killing people with finger knives. He became a household name. In another series, my friend actually got me that for like Halloween or Christmas this past year, because I kept saying I wanted to get it. And he was like, well, where is it? And so we walked by it in the store, he grabbed it, and I was like, what are you doing? He goes, well, I'm getting you this. I'm like, all right, okay, cool, that's fine. Not gonna argue with you. So I gotta thank him for that, because actually, this is probably my third favorite of the big three franchises. So the big three franchises for me is Halloween is number one, no surprise. Then Friday the 13th, then A Nightmare on Elm Street. The sequels are a mixed bag, and we're going to talk about that more when I get to what my number 3 is. But this original one is obviously a classic, and we have it to thank it for introducing us to Johnny Depp. So we got to give it that. Freddy is probably my second favorite slasher, but basing it off of the films, my third favorite franchise. This is definitely, oops, didn't mean to bump him. This is definitely my sixth favorite horror film. So, like I said, all of these movies are kind of locked in place. But yeah, so Nightmare on Elm Street. I know it's not a very popular opinion, but also, funny story. So my sister is not a huge fan of Freddy. She's terrified of him. And we were out trick-or-treating, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago. Get to this house. She's going up the driveway with her son and my brother's 2 kids. All of a sudden, she turns around and she's running back and telling one of us to go up there. So my brother goes up, and my sister-in-law and myself are like, why'd you run away? She was like, well, I thought they were just watching Jason, which is fine. But it turns out they were watching Freddy versus Jason in the house, and you know, they had their blinds open, you could see right straight to the TV. So, kind of a funny story. I'm sure she doesn't find it funny, but I think it's funny. And no, I will never ever show her this and be like, hey, look what I got, because I don't need to be slapped in the face. Moving along now, we have 2017's It. One thing I failed to mention was Bill Skarsgård's performance as Pennywise. Probably one of the best horror character performances out there. There's a lot of face stuff that is weird to me. I don't fully get it, but he's still really wonderful, and in fact, that's why we have a Pennywise pop here. I really dig that performance, and I think he's what sells those 2 movies entirely. But the kid cast is wonderful too. Like I was talking about Finn Wolfhard. I'm trying to think of a few other kids from the movie, but they don't list any of them on the back. And Finn Wolfhard is the only one I know from Stranger Things. If you can't see, this is the Hawkins High School shirt. Stranger Things quickly became a favorite series of mine, and for a while I was like bashing people for watching it. I don't know why or what high horse I was on, but I was constantly telling people, oh, you shouldn't watch that. It's so pointless. But look, 15-year-old me, shut your mouth. 21-year-old me, speak. So Stranger Things quickly became a favorite of mine, as you can tell by the poster and the t-shirt. So I do have to give it that. Now another one I don't have a physical copy for. The Thing. So this was a 1980 John Carpenter film. Kurt Russell stars in it, along with Wilford Brimley, Mr. Diabetes himself, in a very young role. He's probably like 50 in it, but he's not like bushy mustached TV commercial guy that we see a lot of. One of my favorite horror movies as of late. I picked it up. I was watching the kill count for it on Dead Meat. And I was like, you know what? I keep telling myself I want to watch this movie. I've gotten it out of the library I don't know how many times, and I've never watched it. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to watch it. And I did. Definitely one of my smart choices that I've ever made. Now, there's a lot of things I can look at and be like, I didn't really need that, but it's a classic movie that I'm really, really glad. I'm just noticing the way I have these set up. Freddy is like pushing on Jason's back. It's kind of like a weird Freddy versus Jason, like he's controlling, because the plot of Freddy versus Jason is basically Freddy uses Jason to bring himself back into the mainstream, and it's kind of what I feel like is happening here. But anyway, The Thing offers a lot of body gore. People melt to the ground. There's a lot of practical effects. There's one that I'm sure a lot of people, if what I'm about to describe will make sense, you can probably picture it and know what I'm talking about. Guy falls. They're trying to get him back up. They're using the paddles and they go clear. And they do it a couple of times. They go to do it again. The guy's stomach rips open like jaws, bites off the doctor's hands. Wow. That was definitely a shock, one I'd forgotten about. And there's also one where the guy, I think in that same scene, the guy transforms into this like weird insect type thing. His head is like completely extended. It's freaky, but it's cool at the same time. Moving along, we've got Nightmare on Elm Street 3: Dream Warriors. This one is actually really great really great premise to it. Basically Freddy's revenge the second Nightmare on Elm Street movie kind of gets ignored with this one, and they bring back Heather Langenkamp as Nancy Thomas. So she's now gotten her medical degree, and she's a nurse or a psychiatrist or something like that at this mental institute. And then there's a girl played by Patricia Arquette, who can bring people into her dreams, and so she brings Nancy in and they fight off Freddy. And now she uses her power to bring in several other people. One character's name is Kincaid. He's funny. You know, let's go kick that motherfucker's ass all over Dreamland. That is one of my favorite lines in a horror movie. Right up next to Busta Rhymes telling Michael Myers, trick or treat, motherfucker. Great. But I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about one of the best scenes in the movie. One guy in the mental institute, he's very good at making puppets. So Freddy uses that against him. Actually, there's two scenes I'm going to talk about, this one and another one. He slices open the guy's arm, pulls out his veins or tendons or something, and walks him like a marionette puppet to the top of the building, cuts him, and the guy falls. But what you see outside of the dream is just the guy walking down the hallway like this. No exposure, nothing. They think he commits suicide, so so that one's good. Another one is there's this girl who wants to be on television. I forget what her name is. She's so forgettable, but it has a really great kill. So she's watching TV one night, and Freddy comes out of the TV. You see his head literally come out of the TV. And he opens, his arms come out, and these like weird robotic arms. He picks her up and says, "Welcome to prime time, bitch," and he shoves her into the TV. I don't know how they marked that one as a suicide, but they did somehow. That never made sense to me. But that is the only improvised line by Robert Englund, who plays Freddy. So, gotta give it props. It has some great kills, I have to say. There are a few boring ones, but those two are probably like top tier in any of the Friday or Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Moving right along to our number 2 film, Friday the 13th, Part 4, The Final Chapter. This was booked as the final chapter, and it literally does kill off Jason because they do have to resurrect him for Part 6. It also has Marty McFly's father, Crispin Glover, who delivers an interesting line that follows with a great kill and some great acting. Throughout the movie, Crispin Glover's character is talking about how he can't get laid. So he thinks he's like a dead fuck is what he calls himself. So he's looking for the corkscrew, so he can pop open a bottle of champagne or wine or something. He's yelling for his friend Ted. "Ted, where the hell's the corkscrew?" And Jason stabs the corkscrew into the guy's hand. And he's like looking at it, and he looks up, cleaver to the face. Crispin Glover sells this kill with all the twitching and shaking he does. It's gruesome, it's violent, it's also hilarious. But can't talk about Friday the 13th Part 4 without mentioning everybody's favorite character, Tommy Jarvis. Played by Corey Feldman, the same guy who plays or voices Donatello in the Ninja Turtles movies. So Corey Feldman, or Tommy Jarvis, he's the first person to actually kill Jason. Now, the whole plot behind, or the whole story behind Jason is he drowns at Camp Crystal Lake in 1958. And his mother goes all batshit crazy. Well, he didn't actually drown. So, gotta give it props for literally having the balls to kill off Jason. And Tommy sells it. Or Corey Feldman, he just starts slamming the machete into Jason, telling him to die. And his sister, not Corey Feldman's sister, but Tommy Jarvis's sister, stabs Jason in the head. That's why you see, if you can, I'll move it closer so you might be able to see it. There's a little slice right there in his mask. That's from this movie. He gets stabbed in the head, falls down, oops, and the machete just slides down his face. Get back up there, Mr. Torrance. Wouldn't want you to, have all work and no play and make Jack a dull boy. So, but anyway. So, it's just a great movie. Great cast. Like I said, Part 4 is the first one to do the whole non-counselors, just random teens getting murdered at a lake cabin. So, before I actually talk about my number 1, I just thought of one more honorable mention. You ever sitting around the Christmas tree at Christmas time thinking that you want to watch a horror movie? Me too. I always watch Better Watch Out. It's a Shudder classic. It's from, I want to say 2018. Great twist. I'm barely going to talk about the twist because you have to watch it for it to be effective. But it's a Christmas horror movie all around this 12-year-old trying to get it on with his babysitter. Why a 12-year-old needs a babysitter is beyond me, but why do I like this one? I'm going to say two words and their name. Patrick Warburton. Need I say more? He plays the father. And yeah, he's only in like 1 or 2 scenes, but he's so funny. And I love him in everything he's in. He's also in Seed of Chucky as Jennifer Tilly's bodyguard. But, so, that's one more. So, we've got 11 honorable mentions. Why not? Number 1. If you've heard me talk about it, there's going to be absolutely no surprise what number 1 is. And for those of you who know me, you're probably already going, yeah, I know what it is. Just get to it. Halloween, 1978. Horror classic. You've got your pale-faced stalker of Michael Myers walking around killing teens on Halloween night, 15 years after he kills his sister in 1963. So it's a 6-year-old who just, like, snaps. There's a lot of theories that Halloween 3 is actually part of the main timeline, and it was actually a failed experiment from that. I totally dig that, and I really hope that's what happens, but there's no way that's what's going to end up happening. So, why I like this is just, there's so many quiet, atmospheric scenes, and not for nothing. Yeah, camp is terrifying. Yeah, Dreamland is terrifying. How about your own neighborhood? How about a guy walking around outside who could just use his knife to sneak his way into your house? That's terrifying. And the fact that the quiet scenes inside of the movie help sell it, really, really, really good. But what I definitely think is probably the best part about this, beyond Michael Myers, beyond the whole, this is a legitimate neighborhood that this guy is stalking through, Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, the most iconic final girl out there. He or she, I don't know why I said he. This was her first role, and she's in so many other horror movies. She's in Terror Train, I think Prom Night, and then several Halloween sequels, from Halloween 2 to Halloween H2O Resurrection, and then 2018's Halloween. She also has an uncredited voice cameo in Halloween 3. But she's what really makes this movie, along with PJ Soles and Nancy Loomis as Linda and Nancy respectively. They're all great. They're great friends, and the two are great victims. The kills are kind of boring, aside from Linda's boyfriend Bob, who gets picked up and then stabbed against a wall, and Michael just stands back and cocks his head, looking like he's just realized it's Wednesday and it's the middle of the work week. So that is my list, plus 11 honorable mentions, because I'm indecisive. I really recommend pretty much all of these movies that I've talked about. And obviously for the Halloween franchise, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Child's Play, I'm going to get into more in October when I cover these movies. But if you're curious, you can check out my reviews for The Shining, Dr. Sleep, and Happy Death Day on my Instagram. So until tomorrow, when we look at Scary Stories Tell in the Dark, I am Luke, and I will see you later.